There's a certain kind of child you've seen before. Not loud, not chaotic, not difficult. Just quiet. Too quiet. A child who doesn't throw tantrums, who doesn't argue, who doesn't scream for attention. Instead, they shrink. They fold inward. They become small in the way only someone who learned that their emotions don't matter can become small. And everyone around them mistakes this for maturity. But it's not maturity. It's survival. Because some children don't grow up being comforted. They grow up being ignored, or shamed, or punished for simply having feelings. So they adapt. They observe. They learn the rule no child should ever have to learn. If they don't see my pain, they can't hurt me for it. This is where it begins. A small moment, a slammed door, a voice raised too high, a parent who picks favorites, a caregiver who only smiles when the child is useful, quiet, polite. And slowly the child starts to understand. My emotions are a burden. My needs make people angry. Love is conditional. So they stop showing anything at all. Their face becomes a mask. Their tone becomes soft, careful, measured, like someone walking barefoot across broken glass, calculating every step. And the world praises them for it. Teachers say, such a calm child. Relatives say, so well behaved. Strangers say, why can't other kids be like this? But there is something you need to understand. When a child hides their pain, when they swallow every emotion, when they become the quiet one in the room, it is never because they feel safe. It is because they don't. A loud child believes the world will respond. A quiet child has already learned the world won't. So they disappear emotionally, piece by piece, layer by layer. Not because they want to, but because it was the only way to survive an environment where the people who were supposed to protect them were the very source of their fear, disappointment, or emotional starvation. And once this pattern forms, once the child learns to hide their hurt, they do not stop. They carry it into friendships, relationships, adulthood, work, life. They become the person who says, I'm fine, while breaking inside. The person who apologizes even when they did nothing wrong. The person who comforts everyone else but never knows how to ask for help themselves. Because deep down, they are still that child. The one who learned that showing their pain only makes things worse. And the world looks at them and thinks, strong, independent, unbothered. But inside, they are exhausted. Exhausted from holding in everything they were never allowed to express. Exhausted from pretending to be okay so no one gets upset. Exhausted from playing the role they were forced into before they even understood who they were. And this is where the real psychology begins. Not in the hiding, but in what happens after a child makes hiding their pain their identity. There is a moment, silent, unnoticed, never remembered clearly, when the child makes their decision. Not out loud, not consciously, but deep inside, where instincts grow before language. It is the moment they realize, no one is coming. Maybe they cried and no one heard. Maybe they tried to explain and got mocked. Maybe they needed comfort and instead received anger. It doesn't matter what triggered it. What matters is the conclusion their young mind forms. Feelings are dangerous. Love is unpredictable. If I want peace, I must disappear. So the child begins the transformation, not a dramatic one, not visible to others. It is quiet, internal, slow. They stop asking questions. They stop expressing needs. They stop showing hurt. Their face turns neutral. Their tone becomes soft, careful. Every word is filtered before it leaves their mouth. They become experts at reading everyone else's emotions because they had to. Because predicting danger becomes their version of safety. This is why children who hide their pain grow into adults who sense tension instantly. A sigh, a shift in tone, a change in someone's expression. They pick it up like radar detecting storms on the horizon. Hypervigilance. That's the psychological term. But for the child, it's simply survival. They learn to stay small, invisible, easy. They think, if I cause no problems, they won't get angry. If I stay quiet, no one will leave. If I don't show them they hurt me, maybe they'll love me. This is the tragedy. The child isn't trying to manipulate anyone. They're trying to protect themselves. And the world, unaware of the internal war, praises them again. So obedient, so emotionally mature, so well-controlled. But what looks like maturity is actually emotional shutdown. What looks like politeness is actually fear of rejection. What looks like strength is actually unprocessed pain turned inward. Inside, the child begins building walls, not to keep others out, but to keep their own emotions locked in. Shame, fear, loneliness, confusion, all sealed behind a smile that looks calm enough to fool everyone. And here is the most dangerous part. The longer the child hides their pain, the less they understand themselves. They stop recognizing their own needs, stop knowing what they feel, stop trusting their reactions. They begin to confuse numbness with peace, avoidance with maturity, self-abandonment with strength. And as the walls grow higher, the child slowly disappears behind them. Not physically, but emotionally. A ghost in their own life. And no one notices. Because to everyone else, they still look fine. When that child grows older, people assume the pain stayed in the past. But it didn't. It simply learned how to walk. The quiet child becomes the quiet teenager, the one who listens more than they speak, the one who understands everyone but feels understood by no one. They become the friend who gives the best advice yet cannot explain their own emotions. They become the student who never complains even when they're drowning inside. They become the child who solves problems alone because asking for help feels like a burden. Teachers love them. Parents brag about them. Friends trust them. And yet, no one sees the weight they carry because their suffering doesn't look like suffering. It looks like maturity. It looks like independence. It looks like calm. But inside, a different story is unfolding. Every emotion becomes a threat. Every need becomes embarrassing. Every desire feels shameful. They begin to see themselves only in two ways: useful or invisible. If they are helpful, people accept them. If they need something, they fear people will leave. So they choose the safer option. They stay silent. Silence becomes their language. Numbness becomes their comfort. Self-sacrifice becomes their identity. And the worst part? They don't even see anything wrong. Because they've lived like this for so long that peace feels dangerous and affection feels suspicious. When someone tries to get close, they freeze. Their mind whispers, "Don't show too much. Don't trust too quickly. Don't let them see the real you." Not because they don't want love, but because love once hurt them so deeply they learned to fear it. So they build routines. They build discipline. They build a life that looks stable. But inside, they remain frozen at the age when they first decided it was safer to hide everything. A child trapped in an adult body. A heart locked behind emotional armor. A soul that learned to survive, but never learned to rest. And here is the cruel irony. The very traits that once protected them are now the traits that keep them lonely. Their independence makes people assume they don't need help. Their calmness makes people think they never struggle. Their silence makes people believe they're fine. So no one asks, no one checks, no one sees. And the adult becomes what the child once feared most. Someone who disappears without anyone noticing. But this isn't their fault. It's the consequence of a childhood where emotions were dangerous and vulnerability was punished. And unless something changes, unless awareness finally breaks the cycle, the hiding will continue. Not because they want it to, but because it's the only thing they've ever known. There comes a point in adulthood when the mind says, "I'm fine," but the body whispers, "No, you're not." Because pain doesn't disappear when a child hides it. It simply waits, buried, compressed, silent. And the older they get, the more that buried pain begins to leak out in strange ways. Not through crying. They don't cry. Not through anger. They don't express it. It shows up in subtler forms, a constant tightness in the chest, an unexplained sadness at night, a sudden fear of being a burden, a habit of apologizing even when nothing is their fault, a deep exhaustion they can't explain. They tell themselves they're just tired, just stressed, just busy. But the truth is simpler. Their body is carrying emotions their mind never learned to process. And it shows. They tense up when someone raises their voice. They freeze when someone asks how they feel. They overthink simple messages. They replay conversations, searching for signs they upset someone. They fear conflict. They fear confrontation. They fear disappointing others. Not because they're weak, but because once, as a child, these things were dangerous. Psychologists call this emotional hyperadaptation. But another name fits better: self-erasure. They erase their needs to make relationships easier. They erase their feelings to keep the peace. They erase their voice to avoid rejection. And slowly, bit by bit, they erase themselves. Until eventually, they can't tell the difference between what they want and what keeps others comfortable, what they feel and what they're supposed to feel, what hurts them and what they pretend doesn't matter. This is why so many adults who hid pain as children struggle with identity. They don't know who they are without the mask. They don't know what they want without fear. They don't know how to love without disappearing in the process. And the world, unaware of the storm inside, keeps calling them strong. You're so calm. You never complain. You're such a good person. But behind every compliment like this lies a truth they cannot say. I learned to be strong because I never felt safe being weak. They don't crave attention. They crave permission to stop pretending they're always okay. They don't want to be saved. They want to be seen. But after years of hiding, being seen feels terrifying. The closer someone gets, the more exposed they feel. Love becomes pressure. Affection becomes fear. Vulnerability becomes danger. So they retreat. Quietly, gently, without explanation. And everyone wonders why. Why does someone so kind seem so distant? Why does someone so stable feel so fragile? Why does someone who understands others so well struggle to understand themselves? The answer is simple. You cannot hide your pain forever without eventually hiding parts of yourself too. Healing does not begin with strength. It begins with something much harder: honesty, not with others, but with yourself. The adult who learned to hide their pain as a child must face a truth they spent years avoiding. I wasn't fine. I just learned to survive. And for many, that realization hits like a quiet earthquake, because the mask they wore for so long starts to feel heavy. The silence they relied on starts to feel suffocating. The loneliness they accepted starts to feel painful. This is where healing begins. In the moment, a person stops pretending everything is okay, not by breaking down dramatically, not by confessing everything at once, but by allowing themselves to feel one honest emotion at a time. A hint of sadness, a ripple of anger, a moment of fear. These emotions were never the enemy. They were simply waiting for permission to exist. And slowly, the adult starts to reconnect with the parts of themselves they abandoned long ago. They learn that expressing needs does not make them weak. They learn that saying no does not make them unlovable. They learn that vulnerability is not a trap. It's a bridge to connection, a bridge to authenticity, a bridge to the self they lost. But the most important part? Healing doesn't mean tearing down the walls. It means learning how to open a door. The walls protected them. They don't need to destroy them. They only need to stop living behind them. And this process is slow, awkward, uncomfortable. Children who hid their pain grow into adults who feel guilty anytime they choose themselves. So the first step is small. Choosing rest instead of overworking. Choosing honesty instead of silence. Choosing boundaries instead of sacrificing everything. These small choices slowly teach the nervous system that safety exists outside of hiding. And as this happens, something beautiful begins. The child inside, the one who once disappeared, starts to return. Not as a burden, not as a weakness, but as a guide. Because that child was never broken. They were simply alone. And now, for the first time, someone finally shows up for them. You. You become the adult you needed when you were young. You become the voice that says it's okay to feel. You become the presence that whispers, you don't have to hide anymore. Not from others, not from love, not from yourself. And the moment you believe that, truly believe it, the healing becomes real, not loud, not dramatic, but deep. A quiet miracle for a quiet child who carried too much for too long.